Success leaves clues, and one of my favourite things about our amazing industry is everyone's willingness to share. Here to share her story today is Sophie Brooks, founder of Joy by Sophie, an aesthetic clinic based here in England, up in Manchester. Let's get her on the show, shall we?
All on Build Your Salon.
Hey Sophie, how are you?
Hi Phil, I'm great, thank you. How are you?
I'm very good. Thank you for joining us here on the Build Your Salon podcast, here in the first in a series actually of success stories, and I'm very pleased to have you. So I guess really, what's the little potted history? Tell us a little bit about yourself for people that haven't come across you already.
Yeah, of course. So I am a nurse. That was my sort of background. I came into it. I've had quite a varied career, lots and lots of different things I've tried out. But I went and did nursing back in 2019. I quickly realised that whilst I did love nursing, I loved the sort of people aspect. I wanted to do something slightly different. I wanted to be my own boss essentially. I wanted to have more sort of control over what I do. I've always loved aesthetics, so I've been getting aesthetic treatments myself for probably about 10 years now. But I've always had I've always found the aesthetic industry to be very much one size fits all. And I wanted to get in and do something a little bit different. So yeah, I set up my clinic 2 years ago now.
Okay. And what was the trigger? I think there's always a point in somebody's career when they kind of go, do you know what? Now it's time for me to do my thing. So what was that for you?
So I guess I could maybe say, so whilst I've run my business for about 2 years now, I've been working part-time as well. I worked within the charity sector with quite a marginalised group. And I really, really loved it, but I felt like it was taking a lot of me. It was taking a lot of my energy, and I found that it was taking a lot, but it was starting to feel like I wasn't getting anything back out of it.
Okay. And so you set up Joy by Sophie.
I always knew that it would get to a point where it was like, right, I need to make that jump now. I need to decide whether I do want to go full time or whether I'm going to try and find something. And it got to a point where it was sort of like, well, it's now or never. I can't continue down this juggling too many things at once. So yeah, so start full time.
So tell us a little bit about your business. So tell us about Joy by Sophie, because it doesn't, even just from outward appearances on Instagram, it doesn't look the same as other aesthetic clinics, does it?
No, I don't think it does. I think I've tried to really set it apart. I've tried to keep it as clinical as possible, but also very inviting, very fun. I wanted it to feel, when you're coming into the clinic, that you're coming into somewhere that's very much a safe space. I think, I personally can find Salon sometimes a bit intimidating, sometimes worrying, do I look all right? Have I dressed right? And it's just little things like that, which I wanted to make something a bit different to that.
Okay, so can you tell us maybe some of the things that you've done to make your space more inviting?
Yeah, so it's very, what have I done to make it more inviting? I don't actually know. I think I've just tried to make it as warm and put as much personality on it as I can. If you were to talk to any of my friends when they go to my flat, my clinic is essentially an extension of my flat. So I've tried to make it feel homely, but not too much. I've got things like fidget toys, I've got like a nice seating area, I've got like a few plants and things. So I guess it's things that are very easily replicated, but I've just tried to keep it as with as much personality and colour as possible.
Okay. And when it came to brand, because there's quite a strong brand identity, particularly I follow you on Instagram, so you've got an awful lot on it's a very cohesive brand. So where did that come from?
So that actually came from, I cannot take credit for that. I worked with an amazing brand designer. So she is called Katie. Her business is Boldism. And I think I knew when I was setting up, I was in it for the sort of when I sort of thought of Joy by Sophie. I mean, I rebranded in June, but Joy by Sophie was actually in the works from sort of May last year.
Hmm.
So it was almost like a whole 13, 14 months that I had it. And I was so passionate about it. And I just wanted it to be so different. I knew that I wanted to really invest in making it all look so cohesive and making sure it all fit together. So that's why I decided to work with
Hmm.
a brand designer, Katie.
And as far as your journey so far, then, what have been the challenges of that pivot towards aesthetics away from nursing? What have you encountered? What have you had to overcome?
I think so. I guess there's loads of things that you could probably touch up on. I think, there's the sort of the factor of going from employed work where you're guaranteed a salary every month and you are you're guaranteed the work essentially, to go into somewhere where you're self-employed, you're having to find the clients,
Mm,
you're having to make your diary work. um that's quite a big thing. So I guess there is a sort of financial difficulty.
hmm.
I think one of the main things is just sort of confidence and having the having the back in yourself almost. I think
Hmm.
when you come to working, I mean, I've personally found, and I think a few other people have found, when you come into working in the beauty industry or in any industry and setting up a small business, it can feel quite lonely.
Mm,
And I think particularly when if not nobody in your immediate friendship group is doing that. So I think just having the balls to just do it, and the confidence to just say I need to just jump and do it. There is the finances is a huge thing, the practicalities is a huge thing, but I think ultimately just having the sort of balls to go and do it, definitely.
and had there been any surprises? Was there anything about the industry that you weren't quite expecting? Has anything panned out differently?
Um, has anything panned out differently? I don't know necessarily if anything's panned out differently. I think I always knew it would be hard work. I
Hmm.
think something I found really refreshing actually is sort of the connections I've made along the way.
Hmm.
I've made, so for instance, Sam, I sort of got in contact with her and made really, really good connections there. And then again with Katie, with yourself, I think although it's not necessarily that I thought that it wouldn't be as friendly as what it has. I think there is definitely still um there's still cattiness and things in the in with certain things, but
Mm,
I've definitely feel like, me personally, I've been very refreshed by the different connections I've made along the way, and
mm.
the people I've met that I never necessarily thought I'd meet.
That's lovely, and I think I think what you've touched on is a real shift in the industry over the last, but I'd say certainly in the last decade, probably more so in the last 5 or 6 years, where we've realised that actually collaboration isn't an option anymore. We've all got to kind of muck in together to get the most out of our industry and to protect our industry in lots of ways. And I think maybe a lot of the kind of waspishness that used to be between business owners and even between individual therapists sometimes, I think that's kind of started to go by the wayside. At least I hope so. That's kind of what we all want the industry to be like. And just for everybody listening, Sam, who Sophie's referring to, is Sam Marshall, who we interviewed on the Build Your Salon podcast a few months back, and I will link to that episode in the description as well. So, what do you think sets? We've talked about your strong brand identity, but what do you think it is that sets you apart from other clinics? What is it that you're trying to achieve that maybe is slightly different?
So I really wanted to create a space that was, a safe and welcome space for everyone. My clinic Nick has always been, so straight from the get-go, it's been very much targeted at sort of the queer neurodivergent community, me being from the queer neurodivergent community myself. That was sort of who I wanted to make it as accessible as possible to, and as open as possible to.
Hmm.
So I think by using my own experience as having a neurodivergence, and also knowing other people as well. You know, I've worked within sort of like mental health settings before. I've worked with people with, you know, autism, ADHD, etc. And just using that experience and that expertise, I've really tried to apply that to my business.
Hmm.
I've been very, very sort of clear within my values. So my three sort of values is being holistic, inclusive, and illuminate. And they are, you know, something that I've really made sure is at the center of my business and everything that I've done.
Hmm.
Um, which I think sets me apart. I think that once you sort of know your brand, once you know your sort of your client base that you want to work with, and you know what you stand for, it makes it easier in the long run to make those decisions based on for your business, I guess.
I think
Um,
I think you've hit on a couple of really important points there. I think the first thing that I noticed very quickly when we started working together was how quickly you kind of found your place in the industry, and that journey of identifying quite, let's face it, a very tight target market. Normally that's something that comes after years and years of trying to be a generalist and trying to please everybody and trying to have a very broad appeal. But you've been really very brave from the get-go. And does that feel like a brave move to you?
do you know what? It didn't feel like a brave move. It just felt like the right move for me. I guess perhaps it is a bit of a brave move, but I think now, particularly within aesthetics per se, you know, it is such a saturated market, and I knew that if I wanted to be successful, I would have to really sort of target what I knew and what I felt most comfortable with. And the reality is as well, if I was to be a generalist aesthetics and you know work with client groups or demographics which I didn't necessarily relate to, I think I would have found that harder.
Hmm.
Um, but my clients that I have now, you know, I have a really really strong professional relationship with, and you know, I really really got on with them. I consider them as friends actually, which probably isn't very professional, but I think it's been so easy for me to sort of to find my client base, because it's just we've naturally been attracted to each other. Maybe.
I think there's, I think, yeah, I would be a little cautious about being friends with all your clients. I think we can run our businesses in a friendly way without necessarily being friends, because. Not because there's anything that I don't think you would treat them any differently or professional standards start to slip or anything like that. But it does hurt a lot more if one of those clients decides not to come and see you anymore. And if you've got that level of friendship, that can sting a little bit. So I would bear that in mind for the future. The other thing that you hit on though is how strong your values are. So just remind us of your three values again.
Yeah, so my three values are holistic. First one's holistic. So I look at all my clients in a holistic sense, um, everything that sort of encompasses them. My second one is inclusive. So, you know, straight from the get go, um, I wanted Joy by Sophie to be as accessible and inclusive for everyone as it could be. Um, and then the third one is illuminate. So illuminate, basically, I don't want to change anything about my clients. I want to work with their, you know, natural features already, and work to illuminate all the things that they already have. So that's my
And
points.
you said that actually having that very strong sense of what the business was about and those strong values has actually made life easier for you. Can you talk a little bit more to that?
I think just based on making decisions. So I think so. For example, there's certain sort of trends within aesthetics that I perhaps haven't jumped onto. So whether that be, fat dissolving or things like Russian lips, I don't have an issue with other people doing it. But the other thing as well is sort of being inclusive. So and wanting to be as accessible as possible. I think I've made a conscious effort to try and when I am using social media, for example, I don't do any sort of airbrushing. I don't do any removal of any blemishes and things like that, because that just felt very anti inclusivity to me. It
Hmm.
felt like, what is the point of trying to promote that everybody is, bodies are bodies and we all have bodies and they're completely normal, and the tech industry might try and tell you aren't necessarily desirable. It's not fair for me to then go and try remove them from the pictures.
Mm.
Guess there are two ways just off the top of my head.
Very good. And I think I think what I've always tried to emphasize in what I teach is that actually having a strong sense of what the business is about, and putting the work into the vision that you have for how the business is going to be run. It can feel like really quite heavy work at the beginning of a journey in particular. It's a lot of head scratching and a lot of guesswork sometimes, because you don't know how things are going to pan out in the marketplace. But ultimately, it makes so many decisions a lot easier. And like you've said, there's certain services that you've decided not to bring in because it is misaligned and it doesn't sit nicely with the values that you have already. So that very intense experience of setting your values at the beginning does reduce a lot of the emotional decision making as time goes on, and I think a strong sense of what a business is about and where we're going is actually a relief for a lot of people once it's in place. So tell me a little bit about, so obviously we've been working together for a few months now, and I just want to, this isn't an advert as such, but I do want to, it's an important part of my journey with you. So what was your business like before you encountered the group coaching program, and what did you feel was missing that actually a coach might be able to bring?
Um, so my business before was very sort of laissez-faire. I very much felt, people would say to me, "Oh, are you, you've got a business?" And I would say, "No, no, my business has me." I very much felt, do you know what? It was going well.
Mm.
I was doing good in terms of, seeing clients and having busy, fully booked days, and I felt like I was growing as well. I was getting busier, but I didn't feel like I had any sort of control over what was happening. It felt very much just like the wheels were turning, but I wasn't necessarily going anywhere.
Hmm.
Um, and then that's when I met Sam, and she recommended me to
Mm.
your.
And then you initially started with Salon Spark, which is our accountability group. But
Mhm.
then really quickly, and quite often it takes, months, sometimes years for people to move up to Salon Accelerator, which is a lot more of an intense experience. But you did that quite quickly. What was it that prompted you to move up?
So it actually, I mean, I think it took me quite a while to actually even, because I remember we had the chat, didn't we? We first spoke like maybe 6 or 8 weeks before
Hmm.
about getting into Salon Spark, and I'd kept having to make appointments, but then having to cancel them. But then what changed it for me was I had moved into my own clinic. So before I was in a shared studio, which I guess makes it a little bit less serious, doesn't it? It makes it a bit more informal. It's just a sort of business that I do on the side. But then when I moved into my own clinic, I was very much, I wanted to make the most of it. I wanted to really put my everything into it. The jump from Salon Spark to Salon Accelerator probably came because um, we were sat in goal, and I remember having that chat with you and saying, I feel really, really fine. It's purely accountability I just need somebody on my back. And then actually, once we'd got into it and had a couple of calls, I was like, God, I really actually don't know what I'm doing. I feel like I've done pretty well so far, but there was just so many things that I just didn't know about. So in terms of like making sure I'm charging the right amounts in terms of, marketing what I already do. There was so many sort of nitty gritty bits of running a business that I just didn't know anything about. So Accelerator just felt like it felt like it was the necessary step to get, a bit more support from you, a bit more sort of one-to-one work. I got to do, all the amazing modules that are online, all the e-learning, which has been, amazing. Being able to just sort of plug in with them and do it at my own pace has been really, really good.
So, what would you say have been the biggest shifts in the business? So, what's changed as a result of that journey?
I think I feel much more in control of how things are going now. I feel much. I mean, I am having a business and relying on being self-employed. There is an element of not having control because you're relying on sort of other people's business. But I think I feel very much in control of what I am in control of now, and what I have the ability to control, I can control. I think as well, just having, other people that I can lean on. We're in a really, really supportive group where we work with, there's loads of other salon business owners, and um, having that community feel, and particularly on a Friday morning, if you're feeling a little bit like, oh god, this week's been really testing, or it can feel quite lonely, but then when we come back and do those group calls and everybody's so encouraging with each other, and everybody really, like, we all just really want to support each other and give each other the best. I think that's the biggest things that I've benefited from.
And then, of course, the big change is kind of in the offing right now at time of recording, because you've decided that now the clinic's going to be your full-time job, and you've given notice on your other position. So, what was the process for that? What was the trigger? What kind of made you feel that now's the time?
I think it just was getting too much. I was getting burnt out trying to do everything. And I really felt like my other job I loved. I still do love. I still feel a bit like I'm not actually leaving. I feel like I'm still going to be there in one way. But I think the sort of trigger point for me was perhaps by being surrounded by other, business owners within the hair and beauty industry, within the sort of hair and beauty industry. It naturally, like, you begin to feel yourself that the more you sort of achieve and the more goals you hit, the more sort of ambitious I felt like I was becoming, the more I felt like I wanted to do with my salon, that
Mm-hmm.
I just, with my clinic, that I just didn't have the capacity to do because I was working part-time. And so I've handed my notice in. I've finished next week, and I'm launching my membership soon. I'm hopefully gonna be adding more services, and I'm just gonna be able to offer that real premium service to my clients that I want to, that I haven't always been able to, because having your spinning too many plates, you're gonna drop things at some point, and yeah.
I think it's a really important mindset shift, and I think it takes somebody from that place where the kind of bread and butter job where the guaranteed wage is your security blanket, and then something happened in that process which all of a sudden it felt like, actually, this isn't the security blanket anymore, this is the anchor, this is pulling me back, this is stopping me reaching my potential in my own business. And I know that we have some gentle teasing in the group, because I'm always pushing people just a little bit harder and just increasing that target just a little bit. But the whole point of the program is to see what your potential is, and see how far we can take that business model, so that you can make an informed choice. And I think that's my job as a coach, is just to kind of open your eyes to just what might well be possible. And it's been so inspiring to see, and actually a very quick journey ultimately, hasn't it? Because I think, how long is it between you floating the idea of going full time in your own business and it actually happening? It wasn't long at all.
I think it was about 6 weeks.
Yeah, it
I
was.
think it's coming for a while, but I
Mm,
think I don't know about other people, but I sometimes like to just tease things into the ether and just be like, maybe I'll do this, but then generally once I've spoken it, I'm like, no, that's it now. I'm going. I'm doing it. It's an impulsive ADHD thing. I don't know, but you've got to just do it now and again.
And I think what was lovely though was after you floated the idea, how the whole group just piled in with loads of support and said, "Yes, of course you must do that," and of course it's a no-brainer for you to go full time, and you're bound to smash it out of the park. And it's been amazing to see. So, just kind of looking forward now, where are we heading? What's the ultimate goal for your business? I'm putting you on the spot a little bit because I don't think this is something we've really discussed in any great depth, but where are we heading? What's the ambition?
Oh, where am I heading? I don't know. I mean, who really knows? I think, where are we heading? I'd like to be, really pushing. So something I've actually not spoken about is, the gender affirming aesthetics work I do. I would love to see that I would love for that to be my sort of focal point that I'm known for, and for that to be quite a large bulk of my work. I'd love to be, just still offering. I'd definitely like to get busier and bigger, but I would still like to have I'd still really like to have that sort of good relationship that I have with my clients. Like I'd like to get bigger, but not compromise on that. Yeah, who knows? Maybe just like 5 salons or, 3 other injectors. I'm not sure. That's but yeah, I think I definitely would like to grow. I don't know whether that's down the sort of having my own salon and other injectors working for me, or maybe doing more sort of training around inclusivity and aesthetics. Who knows? We'll see.
Well, whatever it is that you choose, I'm sure it's going to be an inspiration to watch it all unfold. And I'm hugely excited for the next 12 months in your business. I think 2025 is going to be a spectacular year for you in lots and lots of ways. So thank you for sharing your journey with us. If people are inspired by what you're saying and they wanted to follow you, what's the best way for them to keep in touch?
So the best way to keep in touch with me is on Instagram. It's at Joy by Sophie.
And it's just an absolute lesson in what social media should be about. If nothing else, go and check out Joy by Sophie and be inspired. Just the authenticity that comes out in every post, and you reap the rewards in terms of engagement, and the algorithm loves you for it. We can just tell. And now 3 very quick questions, which I always finish every guest episode with the same questions. So the first is, the first is, what is the best piece of advice that you've ever been given?
Oh, the best piece of advice I've ever been given is to just be yourself, do what makes you happy. You might struggle with things, but go through it and just do what makes you happy, basically, I'd say.
Okay. And if somebody was going to follow in your footsteps, what's one piece of advice that you could leave behind for them?
Knowing that it's a competitive and saturated market, but I think if you really have it in your sort of mind's eye that you're going to do it, you will do it. It's difficult, but you can absolutely do it.
And my final question, what is the best thing about the salon and beauty industry?
The best thing about the salon, I think, just getting to be a part of making other people feel good about themselves. Definitely, yeah.
It's a privilege, isn't it, really?
Yeah, it is massively.
Love it. Super. Thank you so much for your time today. I'm sure we're going to be getting you back on the Build Your Salon podcast sometime in the future too. Thank you. So there we have it, my interview with Sophie Brooks. What an inspiration, and the first in a series of Salon success stories. If you would like to feature in a future episode of the Build Your Salon podcast, my email address is at the bottom of the screen. Also reach out if you have questions for my monthly Q&A sessions. Just 7 short days until I'm coming in your eyes and ears again with another dose of wise owl wisdom. And until then, take care. Let me guess. Your appointment book is full, but your bank account isn't? How long are you going to let that go on for? Isn't it time that you got paid properly? My Get Paid Properly program isn't just another course. It's your roadmap to boosting your profits, increasing your takings, finally getting rewarded for the hard work that you do. With 9 straightforward modules, my foolproof pricing spreadsheet, and I'm even throwing in a one-to-one coaching call to answer any questions that you have about the training or anything else that's getting in the way of your incredible success. Head to getpaidproperly.com/podcast and you can save £100 on your sign up and get that bonus coaching call with me. The program is backed by my signature 90-day no quibble guarantee. Take the training, take the coaching call, and if you don't feel you know enough to confidently set your prices profitably for the future, I will coach you myself until you do. Head to getpaidproperly.com/podcast, lock in that saving, and finally take strides in the direction of getting rewarded for your hard work.
All on Build Your Salon.